Now, Gartner projects agentic AI will be inside a third of all enterprise software by 2028, up from less than 1% just 4 years ago. IBM's own research shows AI-enabled workloads jumping from 3% to 25% of enterprise operations in the same short window. Now, every major technology company on earth is racing toward the same goal at once. Microsoft with Copilot Studio, Google with Gemini Enterprise, Amazon with Bedrock Agentic Core, and ServiceNow, of course. IBM's watsonx orchestrates Salesforce's Agent Force. So, well, you pretty much get the picture, right? Now, Salesforce's own newest data shows enterprises nearly tripling their AI agents in a year. And in the same report, admitting that data readiness and unclear success metrics still stand in the way. Now, IBM's chief commercial officer put it across as this: the biggest obstacle isn't really the AI, it's actually the data that lies beneath it. Nitesh Bansal runs our systems, a mid-sized Indian IT company navigating this exact storm from inside the industry that's supposed to help everyone else adopt it. Now, days ago, his own company posted 30% revenue growth and adjusted EBITDA numbers of 51%. And of course, the fact that at the end of the day, the new bookings remained at the same level. This is, of course, proof that even companies selling the solution are, of course, also going ahead and trying to understand the economics of it, or maybe they already have. So, well, this is the conversation that I'm going to be having exclusively with Mr. Nitesh Bansal on Front Page, and I'm truly, truly excited to go ahead and welcome him to the show. Welcome, Nitesh. How are you doing?
Very good, Sudhi. Thanks for inviting me to the show.
Fabulous to have you with us. Really looking forward to this conversation. And I want to actually, right off the bat, start with the setting of the context. Now, the way I kind of introduce the entire situation, it's been for somebody, let's say, who is probably hearing the term AI agent for the very first time. So it's an understood fact that it's no longer something which just completes the task end to end. It actually goes ahead and does a lot more. So in plain language, what's the real difference between the AI most people already use daily and what the entire industry is now actually racing to build?
That's a great question, Sudhi. And, people are using AI like consumers on an everyday basis. And
Right.
sometimes they do it consciously, that they know about. And sometimes, even unconsciously, because it's built into the apps that they're using every
True.
single day. When you look at how they're using consciously, it's actually, in many ways, people are using it to build their next travel itinerary, find out answers to questions which they otherwise will have to fire, 15 searches to do, or even carry out some of what you would call, a personal assistant tasks. And those are, what I would call very simple, basic usages that people can do. But when you transport that into an enterprise context, when you want to carry out business functions using AI, you need to build AI to be both safe and secure. And that's a fairly
Sure.
long part of the conversation. But more importantly, you have to tie it together in a manner that it operates on the data sets that you want it to operate on. Look at the context in the way it is supposed to consider before trying to find an outcome, and then deliver the task in the context of the ecosystem that you operate. To give a very simple example, while you can ask AI, what my travel itinerary, if I'm traveling to France, could look like, and that is general, web search and a lot of travel logs, etc., that the AI can traverse through and provide the response. But when you want AI to respond to how's my cash position looking like for the next quarter, given the kind of payroll expenses and others that I'm running, it has to operate on the statements, cash flow statements, the bank statements, and the financials of the organization within the context of order bookings and committed, PRs that have been raised, etc., to arrive at the right answer. And that requires the AI to be enabled in that enterprise context. So I think, that's a very short, laymanish answer that we could provide in that.
Fair enough. But at least it just gives us a little bit of clarity as far as the numbers are concerned. And this is something which is very interesting. 1% to 33%. Gartner agentic AI grows. That's what the Gartner report says. Now, which means just in about 4 years, we are looking at almost like a leapfrog. Now, IBM says AI-enabled workloads will jump from 3% to 25% in the same window. Now, honestly, Nitesh, I want to understand this. Is that pace of change actually very realistic? Or is this the kind of prediction the industry tends to make about itself every few years that, well, honestly, we've seen this in the past as well, never really arrives on time, no?
Well, we definitely have seen this a few times in the past, and it may or may not have always achieved the same numbers as were projected. However, I want to point out that AI revolution is unlike any of the others that we've seen earlier.
Fair.
Because it has become so pervasive. It is a technology which is extremely powerful and capable of really enabling each and every aspect of what we do in business, right from looking at basic housekeeping and making sure that individual productivity goes up, to doing very complex tasks which earlier were very difficult to accomplish. So, and also for the first time, we have a technology where the capabilities actually gone far ahead and is far ahead of what it is being utilized for. It's a common saying, right? Necessity is the mother of invention.
Sure.
Here, for once, we have a technology which is offering far more capability, and we as humans are still figuring out how to really take advantage of it, fully leverage it in our day-to-day business to create returns. So numbers, well, different research houses may have different methodologies to predict numbers, but one thing is for sure, that the amount of change and the pace at which we will see this adoption happen and change happen is much faster than anything that we've seen in the past.
I agree with you on that one, but I'd like to add something to that. Generally speaking, new technology, Nitesh, we've seen this historically as well, it should, according to me, throw up issues. Because if everything seems to be perfect, and there is a calm to the entire situation, then trust me, there is a storm brewing underneath which we are unaware of. So that's why one point which I want you to probably shed light on is the technology, as you mentioned, is far more capable than what we are being able to understand and utilize from it, genuinely throwing up problems. Because I'd like to highlight a problem which apparently has been said and stated by the IBM's chief commercial officer, Mr. Rob Thomas, and this is what he believes. The real gap in the market isn't providing agents, it's actually integrating them into enterprise data that's often incomplete, siloed, or just, well, simply wrong. One, do you agree with that diagnosis? And if you do, the data problem is really this widespread. Why does every company, generally speaking in the ecosystem, is constantly marketing the agent instead of trying to go ahead and figure out the boring, harder problem, as I just mentioned?
Well, Sudhi, for one, I completely agree that data is a big problem. But that's not the only problem.
Okay.
And to agree with your statement that any technology or any such revolution which is becoming really pervasive should throw up more problems, because if it is seeming like calm all over, then we're missing the storm.
Sure.
Right? And there are issues, and I've always stated that AI is not really a tools problem. It is a human problem, and that's much bigger than even data, right? Because the ability to use AI in the right manner, it depends on the human capability of understanding how to use AI, where to use it, and how to harness it in a manner that it produces the right results.
Also, I'd like to add one more thing. When to use it.
Please.
I think that's
when
also
to use
important.
it. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely, because it's not one size fits all.
Right.
And you do not want to put an elephant to pull a baby cart.
True.
Where you're looking at
That's wonderful
deterministic
imagery.
automation. Yeah. And the fact is that even today, right? I mean, where you can use deterministic automation to carry out a task, you must. You want to use AI where you want to fundamentally reimagine the experience and the outcomes that a particular process or a particular set of events should result in. when we look at, why are agents getting marketed so much and why
Yep.
is it all about agents? Because one, of course, to promote something and to market something, you always look at the shiny object, right? And
Yeah.
agents today are the shiny object. But we have to also go a little deeper and understand what is the fundamental shift in capability that we are getting through agents. And the fundamental shift is that earlier, when we were able to automate stuff, we were automating things the way the human did it. And we took the mundane activities, connected the dots, and created the workflow without the cognitive ability to
Correct.
determine the path of where or which direction one should take. Now you add cognitive ability because of the whole generative AI, machine learning,
Sure.
everything else that you can put behind, and the frontier models that have consumed so much data and information that it provides a significant ability to decipher, to decide, right? But that has to also be put under guardrails. That has to be put under checks, security processes, compliances, so that it does not hallucinate to your detriment.
Fair.
And that's where enterprise readiness and the human angle becomes very important.
You know,
And
it's
that's why
interesting.
when we
Sorry,
are,
you were saying. Sorry.
just to complete the statement, because when you were introducing, you talked about, how our systems is enabling enterprises solve these problems. And, our focus has always been that it has to be a combination of the humans who have the proficiency to use AI in the right enterprise context, understand the enterprise context and, the industry needs, marry the capability of AI tools, which are growing in power every single day. They have more and more capabilities, more features embedded into it, and orchestrate it in a manner that delivers true ROI. Without having the vision of what you want to achieve, doing it as a science experiment is not going to lead anywhere.
I agree with you on that.
And hence, all of these
Absolutely.
elements become important.
You know, it's interesting. You touched upon the thought of being cognitive. Now, generally speaking, I feel us as humans tend to go ahead and get very excited about a situation without actually diving deep in trying to solve what actually is the issue at hand. Right? At some level or the other, we are trying to go ahead and say, all right, you know what? This is going to make my life easier. That is generally the mindset and the thought process. And you want to go ahead and probably implement something in a way that will go ahead and do that. We don't realize, without actually going into a very deep dive, in terms of, are we actually solving a problem or creating 9,000 more for each other, right? And I believe that's where it's very important. And I think that's where somewhere, do you feel that the enterprise or the general ecosystem is mature enough to probably start to realize that, okay, wait a minute, we need to calm ourselves down. We need to go ahead and understand things a lot better first, and then start to get into the implementation phase. Because you know what? There are human jobs at risk. There are various other factors which are at risk. Also, the reputation of the enterprise is at risk.
So the enterprises in general are on a spectrum, right? As always, there are a few who are far ahead, who've started understanding what it takes to truly leverage the power of AI and where to use it. Whereas there are others who obviously are following suit and maybe doing a few things in experimentation, and others who are waiting and watching. We ourselves actually conducted a research in December and came out with a report of the state of Agentic AI. And what we found is that hardly 15% of the organizations have been truly able to put agentic ecosystems into production and get any kind of ROI. Whereas, almost 65% claimed that they had AI initiatives on agentic AI running within their organizations. So we analyzed, what is the difference? What does it make 15% successful or ahead of the others? And really, it boils down to two or three things, some which I'm sure you will resonate with. First and foremost, the topmost thing that came out was enterprises who consciously take that step back and define what is it that we're trying to achieve.
Correct.
Is there a real ROI that we are going after? Or are we doing it just out of FOMO to say we are also doing AI?
Fair point.
Right? And the organizations that define the ROI had a higher chance, in fact, almost 80% higher chance of achieving success. But that's not enough. Beyond that comes understanding and assessing your state of data readiness.
Yes.
Same point as you were making.
Right.
Data is in silos, systems are disconnected or broken, and that enterprise ecosystem being pulled together is extremely important for AI to be able to do its job, right? So investing that readiness of data, readiness of your enterprise landscape, and making sure that the AI posture that your AI stance they're adopting is suitable for a brownfield environment. You're not going by what the tech companies in the Bay Area would announce saying, oh, already 80% of my work is getting done by AI.
Doesn't make a difference.
They have I'm sorry?
I said it in my head. Doesn't make a difference, right, Nitesh? I mean, that might be a very different workflow. That might be a very different sort of an outlook or a vision that company has.
And they're usually doing it in greenfield environments. They are writing code using AI, and that's something AI is really good at. And it doesn't have to take into account, 50 systems that were built over the last 40 years and has your enterprise knowledge sitting inside them. So accounting for that becomes very important. And then, going from there, making sure that, and then gets into a little more of technical discipline of, and that's where people become important. How do you extend the context? You're building an agentic ecosystem. Your frontier models, you'll adopt the most expensive model, give you higher context length. But the success of an agentic ecosystem doesn't lie in how the context length is extended, rather how context is extended across agents.
Sure.
And how you can have a master orchestrator agent which actually carries that forward and is able to understand or predict the next best action. Because that's where the intelligence lies in order to orchestrate an event. And that's what creates a difference between an automation that leads to 50, 60% automation versus an automation that leads to maybe 80 or 90% automation. And then last but not the least, people misinterpret autonomous as being without humans. Whereas autonomous in the world of agentic AI has to essentially be designed for human in the loop. Because the human in the loop is what determines the quality of the outcome, ensures that the model drift is checked, ensures that, when you arrive at edge cases or nuances, you're able to take appropriate action. And then the AI learns from it, right? So all in all, when all of these things come together, and this is all about a learning curve and organizational maturity and putting together the ecosystem with a defined purpose, then people will see more success.
Also, Nitesh, I'd like to probably add, and correct me if I'm wrong, for a company like yourself, for example, our systems, you come to me, I want a solution as far as agentic AI is concerned. Now, it's interesting that, Salesforce's own data, and I'll just share this with you. It says that agents tripled, but the trust didn't, which is actually what I'm going to try to ask you on this. Now, the onus is on your shoulders. You're trying to go ahead and implement something as far as my workflow or my enterprise is concerned. Now, that is something which is essential for it to kind of, be something which I thoroughly go ahead and appreciate and celebrate when you've gone ahead and done the implementation, which is the trust and the readiness problem. How do you earn that? Because it seems that at this given point in time, the industry is gung-ho about deploying more agents, as in the case with Salesforce, and hoping in a way that maybe the trust factor kind of catches up along the way. Do you not think that it should be the other way around?
Well, I completely think it should be the other way around because it has to, be rooted in trust.
Yep.
And trust, the way I look at it is probably at three levels. Number one, there are certain organizational security and compliance requirements that are absolutely non-negotiable. With all the stories around how AI was able to, get into something or do something that you didn't even want it to, all it is, of course, it is going to create anxiety in the user world, right? Ensuring that you built a AI enterprise-ready AI system that will have the appropriate guardrails, have the security policies, have the compliance ecosystem built in a manner that the company's own compliance is not at risk. Companies have taken years to build their compliance policies. They've created their role-based access controls. Now, suddenly, just because AI starts accessing your enterprise data stores, your role-based access control cannot be gone for a toss.
Sure.
So you have to make sure that whatever MCPs, whatever APIs are being written, the role-based access control is in place. And that is explicit trust building. Then there is an implicit trust building. You have to have an eval-first methodology. You cannot deploy an AI where you have not evaluated it for the desired outcomes. See, the funny thing about generative AI is, 5 people ask that same LLM the same question, it'll get 5 different answers.
True.
That cannot be true in an enterprise ecosystem.
Yes.
If I want to ask AI, what is my revenue in Europe for the month of August, I cannot get 5 different answers 5 times because the revenue is the same.
It needs to be deterministic, right? No, Nitesh? I mean, at the end of the day, those are the things you're playing around with. Those are the decision maker.
And that is where your AI ecosystem needs to have a very clear a way of determining when it uses a deterministic method and when it goes into a generative or even do a frontier model fetch. That orchestration, that kind of a thing needs to be built in. Beyond that is the human in the loop, which is to say, if there was anything that was not something which gets a 95 or 97% confidence score, then I will get the human in the loop, right? Building the observability behind it, building the auditability behind it, building the explainability behind it, so that at any point of time in future, you can go back to any particular transaction or a workflow and say, at this point, I want to see what was the data that the AI accessed.
Fair point.
What were the decision points it made and how it decided to do something. Now, all these things taken together is what builds trust. And that, I think, is a non-negotiable for deploying it, we believe.
Okay. I want to understand this then. Let's remain with the trust discussion for a little longer, Nitesh. Recent developments. Anthropic talks about a breach. OpenAI talks about that same logic, right? Now, these are 2 frontier labs. World over, there is a certain sense of trust. Well, they've built very, very authentically over the last, let's say, 3, 4 years, 5 years. What is it that, for example, your customer reads up on this? How are you going to go ahead and probably convince them otherwise? Because these are, again, agentic AI agents that happened in the case of Anthropic and OpenAI. They took their calls, they went on their own accord, and then, at least they were honest enough and transparent enough to go ahead and release the data and talk about it publicly, etc. But again, I'm your customer. I'm like, Nitesh sir, what's going on?
Yeah, and I think, one, we have to explain to our customers that the 2 situations are not comparable. They are obviously, experimenting and testing for extreme conditions. And they have also explained that they had a lot of guardrails switched off because they wanted to test the power of what it can do and take it to the extreme. But having said that, it's a fair question for anyone to ask that, how are you going to prevent this from happening in my environment, in my enterprise? And that's where, all the things that I mentioned just a minute ago, the explicit, guardrails and security building, the ability to understand when you need human in the loop and how you bring human in the loop, having an eval-first methodology, and thinking through the entire ecosystem in a manner of what are the things, just like we think about, what are the things we want the system to do? We have to upfront think about what are the things we do not want the system to do.
Fair point.
I'll give you a quick example. One of my clients who is in an industry where it requires a lot of trust, they deal with government documentation, right? And they're helping people fill forms online and then apply for their whatever government licenses or stuff that they apply for. One of the things that is common that somebody who's filling a form online and knows that AI is helping could potentially ask, so what are the chances of approval? Now, AI, if not controlled, can hallucinate and start providing that answer.
Yes.
But determining upfront that the purpose of this AI is to ensure that the form is full, The form is filled, and the purpose is not to say, with this filled form, your chances of success is 20% or 80%. That has to be built into the system.
Wonderful example.
And that has to be part of the guardrail.
Wonderful example. Because that is such a nuanced thought that at the end of the day, somebody could just very easily gloss over that. But yeah. Wonderful example.
I think this is
sorry.
This is how the agentic systems are being built, and they will have to evolve. One more element which is becoming very, very important is, and I think you touched upon it at some point of time, when people are thinking about, I can use AI to solve all my problems.
Correct.
We have to also take the cost into account, and I think as the agents proliferation is increasing, the cost of tokens, the cost of compute, and the overall cost on the organization is also continuing to go up. Building not just the security procedures and the evals, but also building a proper tokenomics within the ecosystem has become a very important part of also trust building, because you can win the trust of the CISO by saying absolutely no compromise to guardrails and security. You can win the trust of the CEO or the COO by saying your process is well harnessed and it will obviously do exactly what we ask it to do. But your CFO may lose sleep by thinking, oh my God, now I don't know what the bill is going to look like. So making sure that that's taken care of as part of the design has become extremely important now.
Nitesh, tell me this, as far as the impact of cost is concerned, it's wonderful that you brought it up. I was going to do that a little later, but Uber was a big example where we went ahead and saw that, right? An annual budget which was squeezed into just 4 months and it was exhausted. Then they went ahead and put a cap on it, etc., etc. Now, I want to understand this. Generally speaking, do you feel when you, for example, go ahead and discuss this with a lot of your customers, is it a mindset factor or should it be a metric factor? I'll elaborate. For example, an enterprise says, okay, wait a minute, this is new technology. I would like to go ahead and open the floodgates as far as the money is concerned for everyone to go ahead, get comfortable with it. And it's okay. We will review it, let's say a year down the line. We'll discuss cost that time. That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is, wait a minute, I need to strike a balance because, there is an ROI factor attached to it, etc., etc. So how is it that you view it in terms of the balance? Is there a balance? Or is everyone seem to be like, okay, wait a minute, I need to budget everything?
No, I think a balance is essential. And this is no different than, if you go back to, high-tech organizations or any product organization, they all have an R&D lab. And, if there were no guardrails and there were no controls on the budget, you could do R&D about every damn thing.
That's true.
And you could be doing moonshot projects throughout the year without launching anything productive.
Fair.
I don't think, AI is any different. You want your organization to get comfortable. You can create a sandbox environment. You can create a safe environment for people to experiment and use. And you can burn as many tokens as you want over there.
Fair point.
But when you're putting something in production, when you're thinking about real productive usage, you have to take the cost into account because things will scale up. You're not doing that because you just wanted to do exactly what you were doing yesterday. You're doing that because you're either looking at business growth. If you're a SaaS company or a ARR based company, you're looking at number of transactions going up. If you're a data organization, you're looking at higher data monetization, more number of data streams and revenue streams. Each time that happens, your cost will scale up. As your revenue grows, as your impact grows, your cost will grow. And not understanding the correlation between the two is basically a recipe for disaster. So building that tokenomics upfront, understanding what's the impact on tokens, and putting the strategies in place to optimize it is going to be extremely important.
Fair point. Nitesh, then obviously, logically, this comes to my mind, which is the fact that there has to be a metric. I'm pretty sure that you'll agree with me on that. That everything needs to have a metric in terms of the productivity gains which have taken place post deployment of AI, etc. Because then that will directly kind of connect with the tokenomics bit. Am I right? Am I wrong?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Without metrics, we can't run corporate organizations.
Because that was not the case earlier on. if you remember, a lot of people were not attaching a metric to the moment AI was getting deployed. Has that changed?
I think it's beginning to change. Like I was saying, people are learning as they go along. They're on different maturity curves, and the successful organizations are absolutely putting metrics around it. However, I don't think the metrics have become granular enough,
Okay.
and to make it work for now. What I've seen most organizations do, most of my clients do, is they're using the same old proven mechanism of let's put a capital appropriation project request in place. A cap will define how much I'm going to spend, what my CapEx and OpEx is going to look like, for what returns I'm trying to achieve. And then within a band of tolerance, let's go ahead, because there will be some new things we will learn on the way. And as long as we are within the standard deviation, we should be fine. And next time we'll tighten the budget a bit further.
But do you think that might not be the right approach moving forward?
No, I think the approach is right, that the fact that it will get refined further is definitely going to happen, because today it is being looked at an aggregate level. I think with AI tools, we have the power of metering and telemetry. The telemetry will start providing us details about which particular components and where do we consume more versus other places. And then at least, within my organization, as we are building more sophisticated agentic ecosystems, we are already beginning to look at that. That may not be something that the client is always asking for, but we look at components where more AI tokens get consumed, more compute power gets consumed, it takes more cost, and then we define mechanisms to overcome those hurdles. I can give you a quick small example over
Please
there.
do.
We were building an agentic ecosystem for an organization that does B2B sales. And when you do B2B sales, you're looking at your target customer set, you've got a prospect list, and then you match those prospects to your ideal customer profile, ICPs. And then for each ICP, you will then try and find, contacts and do contact curation to figure out who do you want to reach out to. It's standard part of sales cycle. And in B2B, you've got address databases or third-party data sources from which you will extract email addresses, contact numbers, and all those kind of things. Now, if you had to, for example, you picked 10 companies that you want to go after, and you downloaded the entire contact database associated with those 10 companies, and then started filtering for your ICP who are the target roles. And let's say you downloaded 10,000 addresses and you've targeted only 200 out of those. You've incurred a lot of token cost, a lot of processing cost for final outcome of 200 target addresses. Now, instead, if I could break this down into two deterministic queries where I filter the roles first, and then I filter the organization, then filter the role, and then I download only the relevant data set, I would cut down my token consumption by 1/5.
Oh, yeah.
To get the outcomes. Now, knowing that this is where the tokens are getting consumed, why they are getting consumed, and how can I reduce it, maybe in some deterministic manner or by doing a smart algorithm, is how this can move from an unviable to a very viable agentic implementation.
Fair point. Fair point. As far as the investment is concerned, Nitesh, I mean, that's obviously something which every CFO of an enterprise is looking at very minutely. Now, if I were to, let's say, go ahead and discuss that with you from your own numbers, right, which were very recently, you'd released and announced those numbers. Our systems Q2 2026 results, revenues up by 30.2%, which is wonderful. Adjusted EBITDA numbers is at 51% in the same quarter. Now, deal bookings have roughly remained the same. So, I'd like to understand from you, as far as the industry-wide thought is concerned, the AI investment costs very real money well before the returns start to come in. Is that very specific to the way people are looking at things? Or generally speaking, people are looking at it from a different lens where they're saying, oh, it's okay, it's an expenditure, it'll start to probably give returns at a later stage. And that is the question the CFO asks you, how long should I have to wait for the ROI to start to come in?
Sudhi, it's a very good question. We ourselves have started investing in building our capabilities almost 24 months ago. So the investments have gone in various stages over the course of last 24 months, and that goes into training of the workforce. It goes into buying the licenses, consuming the
Fair.
tokens, having GPU set up, servers set up, where our people will experiment and build stuff. However, the specific metric that you referred to, the change, and while the bookings have remained the same, and that's a function of the fact that as service providers who traditionally have been able to monetize based on either number of hours spent or on a fixed price based on the broadly the volume of work that is required, are moving away from, or slowly moving away from, the volume or hours based to really output and outcomes, right? And because it requires much lesser to actually accomplish the same task, what it took to modernize let's say a 20-year-old application, which may have 1 million lines of code, could have taken about 2 years and a decent
Sure.
8 to 10 member team in the past. Today, that can be accomplished in 5 to 6 months. Right. So average time consumed, volume required has come down. And that's to some extent reflected in bookings. But this can come at a significantly higher revenue productivity per person, higher margin per person, because now we are delivering not just the output, which is the modernized code, but we are delivering much faster. There's a benefit in turnaround time. It's far more accurate. It's much better documented, and it can be tweaked to create greater or better customer experience because of all the other elements that can be brought in.
Fair.
So what we are seeing is that this is creating an AI compounded growth cycle. Now, of course, that growth has to catch up, because that's also a function of adoption in the market and adoption in the industry. But we are seeing that revenue mix change, and hence the investments that we've made over the last 24 months are paying off. And we believe that investments will continue to go up, but so would be the value that we deliver out of that. And hence, we should be able to strike that balance that we were talking about earlier into investments and how the recovery of those investments takes place.
Fair point. I'd like to kind of probably further elaborate or follow up on this. Let's say manufacturing, for example. The way you described AI till now, Nitesh, as far as your own company is concerned, manufacturing came to my mind because it's also a very capital intensive business. There's a heavy capital expenditure, and then it starts to pay off. Let's say over a period of 2 years, 3 years, etc. Same logic probably applies to AI to maybe not that extent, but still, because you talked about licenses, training, etc. That's all capital expenditure in my head. Now, manufacturing, generally speaking, tends to function on a principle of the fact that, okay, wait a minute, we are going to do, let's say, 5 lakh numbers. So whatever you're investing in, that 5 lakh will justify it and your cost will get recovered over a period of time. Now, generally, the fear is the fact that what if there is something that goes wrong and we cannot go ahead and achieve those 5 lakh numbers? Here, I would like to correlate that fear to a change in technology, Nitesh. Here is a CFO who's gone ahead, invested, etc. And suddenly tomorrow, the entire expenditure is now being looked at from the point that the entire industry technology change has taken place. How do you factor that in? Because that's a very real fear.
So the big difference between manufacturing and our industry, ours has always been a knowledge-based industry.
Fair.
And the fundamental tenet that makes IT services, and specifically the Indian IT services organizations, thrive is the learnability. The point that we have navigated so many technology life cycles and technology changes, it's not that every time a technology shift happened, we let go of the current workforce and hired a new workforce, which was, capable of new technology. No, it was the experience and the learnability of the existing workforce that molded itself into being a power to reckon with the new wave of things to come. And so is the case here, right? Currently, training everybody on AI is a necessity. That's a survival necessity for everybody. We did that 2 years ago, and we are beginning to see the dividends of it. Now, worst case, and just to kind of, take a cue from the question you asked, if tomorrow there was a next best thing that comes into play, which is not AI, the point is that yes, we will have to reinvest in training people into that new thing. But does all this training go waste? No, it never
That
does.
was the
For
question.
two reasons. Yeah, no, it never does. For two reasons. Number one, the industry or the market that we cater to, like we were saying earlier, it's always on a spectrum. Meaning, while there are those who catch up to every new thing very quickly, there are companies who are, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years behind. And they will continue to have the needs to use whatever we may call today is already, outdated, is still in vogue. I mean, if that was not the case, we would not be talking about mainframes even till today.
Fair point.
You know, people had written off mainframes 40 years ago. But have they really been written off? No. Now, similarly, some of these things will continue. Second is the discipline that people learn through that, going through that wave or going through that learning is utilized in how that new change or whatever new comes out next will evolve and will morph into. So for us, learning and investment in learning is never a waste, and it's never a question of whether we should invest, right? Because that is the power that keeps us competitive. That is the power that keeps us uniquely positioned in this world market where everyone is trying to adopt new things. People might today, I mean, with the power of AI tools, one might say, well, every company can buy their own AI tools and they will be able to
Right.
use it themselves. Why do they need Indian IT industry?
Right.
But the fact is, the learnability and the experience of our people when they're working across 200 odd clients, applying the same things, the collective wisdom that they gain of how to use technology in the right manner to produce the right amount of
True.
outcome is a very unique position that we are in, that continues to be relevant even when the tools are available to everyone. The same tools can be used by everyone, but the same results usually are not achieved by everybody.
Fabulous. Wonderfully put, Nitesh, I must say. And there was a reason I used manufacturing as a stark example for you to go ahead and shed light the way you did. Jobs, big issue as far as turbulent times, the way things are going, especially with Agentic AI coming into the picture. Do you honestly see, because we were just talking about that, since there has been a lot of training, a lot of people seem to have gone ahead and graduated towards grappling with the new technology now in a big way. A lot of people, unfortunately, have also had to have dealt with the layoff perspective. Now, there are two sides to this, and let me go ahead and probably try to kind of get to a thought which I would like definitely your understanding on. IT companies gone ahead, laid off people, tried to figure it out from the point of view of AI being implemented. A year down the line, AI does not give them what they want. They have to hire back people. Now, that is one thing that has happened. First question on that is the fact that, do you think it's too small a fraction for us to even consider it, or it's just a small anomaly, or is that actually what's happening in the ecosystem? That's one. Second, I want to understand the new roles which have come into the picture. Forward deployed engineers, aspects where new roles are coming into the picture. How are the young talent supposed to go ahead and probably navigate through all of that? Because it is a change, big mindset change, Nitesh, now. From, let's say, an engineer who was probably studying, understood that I'm going to go ahead, get some sort of mentorship or training in the organization that I join, and then from there, I can fly off or take off in the organization. That has changed. Organizations now expect you to kind of, hit the road running. How would you like to go ahead and address both these thoughts?
Well, on the first one, Sudhi, while you said IT companies, I think it's a larger phenomenon with what I call high-tech organizations, a lot of Bay Area companies, etc., which had a dual problem. One, of course, they did over hire or overstaff during the COVID times,
Fair.
and that obviously came back to hurt their balance sheets or P&Ls over time. But increasingly, they are also the fastest adopters of AI, and hence, that phenomena is kind of amplified when we look at it from their lens. Beyond that, I think it's probably individual organizations, situations that they're looking at in terms of talent readiness, and if there is a certain portion of talent that is not directly suitable or is not on the learning curve where it makes sense, then perhaps some of these challenges will absolutely come, and individual organizations, I'm sure, based on their conditions, will respond to it.
Okay.
The way I look at the larger industry, there's definitely an immediate and a very important need of reskilling and refactoring the talent, and the speed and the capability at which that gets done is going to be more important than anything else in determining whether the at least the IT services side of the industry would be seen as a net job creator or a net job reducer, right? Personally, I believe there is always a curve, a kind of a lull that happens when new technology wave comes in, because the adoption lags slightly, and there is this gap that is created when
Fair.
you might have the readiness but may not have the demand, and at that point you have to again look at the balancing out of investments versus returns. But eventually the demand will catch up, and I don't think the overall scale of IT industry would suffer. It would require perhaps a very different set of roles to perform those things, like you mentioned. Are they necessarily different set of people? I don't know, because that
Okay.
again goes back to learnings and trainings.
Hmm.
But those roles like FDEs, like forward deployed engineers, like prompt engineers, like context engineers, like tokenomics experts, and a lot of focus on domain would certainly come in the new set of roles. Are these roles to be performed by entirely new set of people? I don't think so.
Okay.
Because it is also a well-established fact that people with experience take more advantage out of AI or gain more productivity or benefits from AI than people with lesser experience. And that broadly relates back to the fact that people with experience have learned through the mistakes to tell AI what mistakes not to do,
Fair point.
and that improves the outcome, right?
Fair point.
For the young people joining the industry, if somebody was to tell them that they're expected to know everything from day one, that's not true.
Okay.
In fact, I think they are uniquely placed, because a lot of the workforce joining the industry now is very AI native. Some of them, if they're coming out of colleges, they've had those courses in the college. But more importantly, even if not, they do not have the unlearning to go through that a lot of experienced people have to go through. So what the experienced people are can gain or benefit by is understanding of the domains, of the industries they've worked in, of the processes that work, and how the engineering needs to be done with engineering discipline to make sure that we avoid the pitfalls when we are using AI. The young engineers can more than make up for it through their native understanding of AI as technology, of their ease of using newer tools, and basically not being shackled by how certain things can only be done in a certain manner. This
Okay.
whole AI first thinking or imagining things in an AI first manner is the true power of where AI can deliver extraordinary results. If we always thought that the way to do KYC was, you first fill up a form, then you upload document one, then you upload document two, then you
Correct.
wait for the circle to complete and say whether your image is clean enough or whether the document is more than 100 MB and can't be accepted.
Sure.
And then wait for 2 days for someone to validate and say, okay, your KYC is done. Then we are missing the point.
Fair point.
Right? Somebody coming in, and usually, if you talk to, I have a child who's going to join the workforce now, and when I look at it from
Congratulations.
his eyes, right? When we look at it from his eyes, he would basically say, "Why Why can't I just bundle all the
Correct.
documents, scan it once, upload it once, and if it reads my passport, it knows my name. Why do I have to fill up the form? And all of that happens together. And by the end of the process, within 5 minutes, it tells me, okay, KYC is done.
Yep.
And that power of imagining, not being shackled by the old ways of working, is what gives a lot of our youngsters an edge, a big edge in being in the workforce. And I think the industry needs both the ends. Industry needs the experience. Industry needs this unshackled way of thinking and working. And I think it will continue to grow only by making sure that this work gets orchestrated across this entire set of workforce together with the right use of technology to amplify the outcomes.
What a balanced answer, Nitesh, I must say. I think one little takeaway I had from that was the fact that you said unlearning, which I agree. Absolutely agree with that. Very quickly, your thoughts on the fact that Mr. Sridhar Vembu, only about a month back, made a statement regarding the fact that one has not been able to create newer roles. And he himself is talking about it from his point of view. He's always been a very transparent entrepreneur. And he said, I'm also a part of that entire bandwagon where we've not been able to create newer roles. Very quickly, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we all need to learn and do things in our own context. Like within my own organization, all of us have been reimagining how we do work on a daily basis. When I'm looking at doing investor calls using Claude to actually understand different dimensions of how my results are going to be interpreted, what could be the relevant questions, is a newfound skill. It's a new muscle. Now, whether it is today, at least in the last couple of calls, I've used it as a bouncing board and not really relied on it. And then eventually, now we'll develop agents around it, which can actually give me more definitive guidance in terms of preparing for those calls. So I think it's a reinvention that all of us have to go through.
Okay.
And when we define these kind of what should I call it, new ways of working, the new roles automatically appear and they come into existence. And then it's a question of how we fit the right people into right roles. I think it's a journey because nobody has created a complete taxonomy of what the new roles would look like, what the definition should be, what their performance criteria, KPIs should be, and how they should be rewarded. But as we go through client projects, we discover the need of some of these come up more prominently, and they become defined. And honestly speaking, today there are just so many of those undefined ones that
Fair.
we are regularly working with.
Fair. In conclusion, Nitesh, I have to ask you this. It's a very crowded space that you are in. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, IBM, Salesforce, I mean, the list goes on. Now, in a field which is this crowded, with giants this large, what does a company like our system size actually offer that the giants can't build themselves, and in a way augurs wonderfully well as far as India is concerned at the road ahead?
Well, the first and foremost thing that we are able to offer compared to a lot of large technology companies is that we are extremely customer-centric, customer-focused. So whatever we're doing is to solve a unique customer's unique problem. We are not trying to solve the world food and hunger. We're not building technology that will revolutionize the world. We are applying the technology to a particular context to deliver the best outcome and the best ROI for an individual customer for their individual needs. Now, that keeps us both unique as well as honest to the purpose of being a service provider. And I think, as technology expands in its capability and reach, the need to use technology in the right manner to solve those particular problems is continuing to be very large. It's not something, I'm repeating myself, it's not something that gets solved by technology itself. It requires humans, humans who understand that problem, who invest the time, show the empathy to understand why is that problem important, and then find the right way to use technology to solve it in the right manner.
Fair point.
That to us, being a mid-sized enterprise, being very nimble and light-footed to move around the customer, understand their needs, and solve them one by one is truly what makes us unique.
Fabulous, Nitesh. Honestly, it's been a wonderful conversation. And as you chug along and make wonderful breakthroughs in the near future, we'd request you to come back to Front Page. It's truly been a pleasure having a conversation with you.
The pleasure is all mine, Sudhi. Thank you for inviting me today. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Look forward to whenever we can do it next. Thank you.
Fabulous. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Nitesh Bansal, who was very astute, very balanced with the way he put things across. I believe the winners in this race won't be decided by who launches the flashiest platform first. They'll actually be decided by who actually survives the unglamorous, expensive years it takes to make the data and the trust catch up to the ambition. Well, they probably seem to be in the right direction. Please do let us know what are your thoughts in the comments below. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Front Page by the IM Network. Like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think AIM.